Hey, I'm Paul, and this is Roast the Post, the story behind the bullet points. This week, we're boarding a one-way flight to uncertainty. Meet the entry-level stockbroker role in Sydney, Australia. A job so stuffed with swagger, it's hunting for talent in Canada and pitching you on a grand adventure to work and live in the land of kangaroos and Vegemite Sammies. You'll trade warm leads for cold calls, swap maple syrup toddies for harbourfront views, and bet your career on the grind towards your RG 146 certification. The upside? A shot at the big leagues, down under. If you can stomach the hustle and the sinking feeling that your new career might just be a glorified sales gig with a side order of jet lag. Is this the adventure of a lifetime or the financial equivalent of a desert walkabout with no return ticket? Let's roast this post.
Wow, that was a lot. That was a great opener.
So this job ad, oh man, the thing that got me about this job ad was that they're recruiting for this stockbroker position in Canada. They want someone from like Toronto Bay Street, our financial kind of hub, to go to Sydney and work there as a stockbroker. That caught my attention. That's cool.
So this is interesting because I am not from Ontario at all. I'm from the west coast of Canada, living on an island. So it is a very different type of energy. And while I think Victoria, BC is huge, it's obviously nothing compared to Toronto. But I often do have to go to Toronto for work. And there is that financial district. And there are like people in suits and business attire going for lunch and business meetings. And it's just it's so different from the vibe here on Vancouver Island. And so, and I don't know much about like that kind of world, the finance world, but it doesn't surprise me then that they would be sourcing from Toronto because it has such a huge that business world, the finance world. But this is what we've talked about before in job ads, where you got to know where to find your ideal candidate. And so right off the bat, just based on your opener, all you've done is read your intro. Just based on that, I am already kind of giving them points for knowing where they're going to find their ideal candidate. That's pretty cool. I appreciate that.
Yep. And I wonder about the underlying kind of conditions that lead this organization to recruit in another country. Like the Australian Stock Exchange, the ASX is it's fairly small, compared to the TSX, to definitely to the London Stock Exchange, definitely to the NASDAQ, the NYSE. The ASX is a bit small, but it is a proper financial market where you can buy and sell equities and securities of Australian companies and registered organizations. Like it's no backwater thing. It's a real professional thing. And they're saying like, hey, there might be people in Toronto or even in, like Montreal. Montreal has a commodities trading exchange, which is fairly well known. They're saying like, hey, we want to find people in Canada to move to Australia to sell our stocks because we think that might be a thing. That's a cool story. And that's like the thrust of what we're going to get into.
I've never been to Australia, but I prefer Marmite. And I'm just going to put that out there versus Vegemite. I love Marmite. I actually my mouth waters when I think about it. I don't know what's in that but it's good. I like it. So yeah, Marmite all the way for me, not Vegemite.
My mouth waters when there's a good mozzarella cheese in front of me, but not a blue cheese, and not like duck fat. I have very pedestrian palate tastes. Like my tastes in food, pretty lame.
So basic. I see my mouth waters when I think about a blue cheese. I think that maybe you don't like umami. Is that what it is? You don't like that umami kind of?
I've never taken karate classes.
Let's get into the post. We're so far.
Yeah, this is gonna go down that road where we just talk about nothing for 2 hours. So we'll start off with the roasty profile per the usual. This is just kind of an overview of the organization. The job title and this is actually interesting. So the job title on the job post was "Move to Sydney, entry-level stockbroker opportunity with sponsorship!" Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. But the actual job title is entry-level stockbroker. The report to title is unknown. The company size is unknown. The industry is financial services. What does this organization do? Well, presumably they're a regulated brokerage and seller of equities and securities on the Australian Stock Exchange, the ASX. Not quite sure, but that's what I pulled out of it. Head office location, Sydney, Australia. Job location, Sydney, Australia. Geographical operating area, Australia. Job type, it's full-time and it's permanent. So that is the Roasty profile.
Interesting.
That sets the stage for us. The job ad itself is fairly short and to the point. There are a handful of sections. There's full job description. That's the section that has everything in it. There's another section called "From Day One, You'll Be." Another section is called "And the Best Part." Another section is called "You'll Thrive Here If You." Another section, and the final section, is called "What's in It for You." So,
These
because
sections.
this is, a narrative is kind of shaping up here a little bit. This is one of the reasons why I was so excited about this particular job ad for us today. I'm going to read this mostly verbatim and break it down into probably two parts because it's different from job ads that we typically roast. It's not as formulaic and it's quite short. So here we go. Full job description. Employer will provide full sponsorship. And for context, I'm pretty sure that this is an employment agency of some type that has posted this job ad. So even though we normally don't name and shame on the show, I don't actually know who the organization is that's hiring this person. So it says, employer will provide full sponsorship. Prime Sydney location. Then it lists a salary and some other financial things. If you are looking to relocate to Sydney with sponsorship, have a knack for sales and a love for financial markets, this could be a dream job for you. This is your launchpad into the world of stockbroking and investment advice. If you're looking to relocate to Sydney, have a knack for sales and a love for financial markets, this could be the dream job for you. You'll work directly alongside senior brokers in a high-energy, fast-paced environment, learning the craft from those who've mastered it. Then we go into the first section, "From Day One, You'll Be," very short. 4 bullet points. Calling and engaging warm leads to build relationships and win clients. Educating prospects about market opportunities and investment strategies. Profiling potential clients and preparing them for high-value meetings. Staying sharp on market trends, ASX performance, and global economic news. And there's one more section I'm going to read out before we pause to discuss. Next section is, "And the best part." There's a crystal clear promotion path. Once you've brought on 20 clients and completed your RG 146 certification, you'll step into an investment manager role, running your own client book, executing trades, and giving strategic advice.
Okay.
So we'll break there. That was perhaps a little bit more than we normally throw out before opening the discussion, but that was kind of the flow point. Does anything stand out for you in this part? Certainly, it's not quite as traditional as a lot of the job ads that we look at.
Yeah, it was interesting. So on my end, whenever Paul's the host, because I haven't seen the job ad ahead of time, I always have a notebook, and this is what it looks like. I don't know if anyone can read that, but it's so terrible. So I take notes frantically, and then I can't read them. But did it have something that repeated? Like you said the same thing twice? That was just how it was written?
That was how it was written verbatim. And for anybody who caught that in the live studio audience chat or at home, yeah, we read these job ads out as they're written. So sometimes it sounds like we're a little bit derpy, if you know what I mean.
It sounds like we're glitching. Yeah. So, and this is interesting. This is interesting to me because this actually, like now that we've done this show, I think we're like heading towards 30 episodes or something like that. This happens more often than you think. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's such a weird thing to me, but we're seeing it so often that people will just, I guess, not proofread properly or get in a rush, or maybe they're just like wanting to get it over with. I have no idea, but this happens a lot where there's something like that
Yeah.
repeated. So I thought that that was interesting because it's just like an easy thing to fix. Like, just don't do that. Just
Yeah.
read it before. So yeah, a couple things. Like, it truly is to me a sales role, and I will be curious to hear whether or not the compensation includes some kind of commission, like variable income type model, because it is a sales role. Like everything that you described. I like that it says that it's a launch pad into something, because it's not really pretending to be something it's not. However, to me, it that's not true when you talk about the title. Like, the title says entry level stockbroker. Is that what it says?
Entry level stockbroker.
That's not what this role is. So it's very clearly a sales role with, as they say, a launch pad into the entry level stockbroker. So just call it what it is. But I think that they're just trying to hook someone. I get what they're doing. And even how you said the title of the post, the job posting is different than the title, like in the body, because it's like advertising this opportunity. So I get why they're doing that. They're trying to market it that way. Um, is it disingenuous? Yes. But also, again, can you blame them? They're trying to they're trying to do something here. Um, High energy, fast paced. I wouldn't expect anything less in like the financial industry, so that's not a surprise to me. Um, and then the best part section is that they have a clear promotion pathway, and then they actually say what it is. Like, we've also seen in job ads so many times where they say, like, you're going to have so many opportunities and this is going to change your career and blah, 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 but they don't say how. And some people might
Mm-hmm.
argue, well, we save that for the interview, but like, why not just say this company managed to say it in a couple of words in their job ad? So that could be really enticing for someone. And yeah, they give those like KPIs of what it means to get to that launch pad. So far, though, it is a reading to me as someone who is quite junior, right, entry level, and is able to just move their life to a different country. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Curious to hear what stood out to you.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great filtering points, right? Like, so some background for this that stood out to me when I was reading through this job ad when I found it was your I absolutely agree with you. You're right that it's a persuasive piece. You know, this is much closer to like an old school piece of ad copy than it is a traditional job posting or job ad. Like, they are trying to convince you that this is for you. Behind that sits I would say, the probable fact that this is an employment or a recruitment agency that has posted this. How are they getting paid? What's their incentive structure? You know, they're getting paid. I would almost be completely certain they're getting paid based on placing people into this organization. So with that kind of context in mind, you can start to think, oh, all right, that's why this sounds more like an advertisement than it does a job ad or a job posting where the company's hiring directly. Because these guys, I don't think they're getting paid unless they actually put bums in seats or bums on an airplane, so to speak. So I found that part particularly interesting. Um, the entry level thing, yeah, it's absolutely entry level. Like, we're not familiar here in Canada with the RG 146 thing, because that's just, you know,
I don't know what that. Yeah.
it's just Australia's term for you are certified to sell securities, like regulated securities on an exchange. Like, you're allowed to be a stockbroker, you're licensed. You know, there's a whole bunch of regulatory stuff that goes into it. There's a similar structure here in Canada for certification of individuals who are licensed to sell securities. I would imagine that the two like are probably really similar. The US has the same sort of structure. The UK, France, the Netherlands, basically anywhere that there's a professionally run stock market,
Yeah.
there's a certification program and licensing program for people to sell on it. So they're saying here flat out, you're going to join and you're going to do that educational pathway to move towards that, to establish yourself. And at the same time, like, we'll allow you to work. You can do some stuff that you're allowed to do. And, like, that's all cool. Like, they're saying, start working and there's a pathway. I found that really good, really positive. They're also saying on the topic of the promotional kind of pathway, spelling out exactly what it is that you need to do to get like promoted. I would have questions about what that promotion actually means in practical terms. Investment manager sounds like an organizational promotion where you would be supervising staff, maybe doing other stuff. But in this industry, not really. Investment managers, they're managing investments of clients. Like, there isn't a whole lot of difference between an investment manager and this kind of salesperson. Like, certainly some investment managers who have a pretty good book of business and they don't care to grow it, they focus on the analysis, they focus on the insights, they focus on the client service, and that's cool for them. I applaud them for writing out that pathway for promotion, but we should recognize that it is also incredibly easy to scale this model. So when you think about a traditional promotional pathway for staff that aren't directly tied to revenue in an organization, they're not in sales, kind of gets challenging, because how do you write out ahead of time, okay, if you do these 10 things, we'll promote you to senior manager. If you do these 20, you're a director. If you do these 30, you're an associate VP. That doesn't scale well if they're disconnected from revenue inside the organization. But this role, where we're talking about salespeople and this sales model, these folks, they can scale this model forever, because they will know that this person that brings in 20 clients, their book of business, they're earning a certain margin off of that, and that's sustainable. So it's like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. They could have 20 of these guys. They could have 50. They could have 100. They can go forever.
Say this person just crushes it. I imagine it's not that easy to get to that like 20 client number.
I doubt it.
And I imagine that there is actually some kind of timeline required to get your certification. However, if this person really crushes it, my concern would be then they're moving on to this other role. But are they really? Are you going to have to do both now? That's my question, because are you actually going to then go and source another Toronto finance person to come in and start the process all over again? To me, the answer is likely not. So you might be getting this promotion when you hit those targets, but you're still going to have to do those other things in the meantime, because they can't just keep doing this over and over and over again. That was my concern. Like, yeah, you get your promotion, but your workload is actually just, I don't know, it's increasing. You don't get to leave behind that sales type position. That's how I see it. I'm just understanding from like role design and scalability, like you mentioned, and sustainability. Like, how does that actually work? They just keep like churning these salespeople out? No, not likely. That's interesting. And then it's also interesting to me that you would get someone from a different country to come in and play that sales role, where that person won't really have that inherent knowledge about that market, about entrepreneurship there. Like, I work for a VC firm that has entrepreneurs across North America, and there are a lot of differences between like legislation and all sorts of things between Canada and the United States. And so that is like a big learning curve. So it's interesting to me that they would have someone from Canada come in to do such a specific thing, sell to Australians, because maybe Australians like a Canadian accent. I don't know, but it's interesting to me that that's the role that they're looking to fill versus, I don't know, something else. So anyway, lots of thoughts just on like such few words. And I do agree with you that it is written more like an ad than a job description or job posting. And I also wonder if sponsorship means, what does it mean for like rent and things like that? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not spelled out super clearly at this point. Like my guess would be that they're talking about their equivalent of employer sponsorship for a visa. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? For certain types of visas to come and work in Canada, we do the same thing. Absolutely, we do. There's also the talk in the US of the H-1B visa. That's kind of been in the press and, a little bit of a hot topic in the past few months or whatever. That's the same idea, employer sponsored visas, that whole thing. We're also, I think, seeing some early hints so far in filtering, right? Because you mentioned it, there are very strong signals that this is a pick up your life and go to Australia kind of role, right? Who's going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
It's a very select group of people who are going to want to do that. Very select group of people. Typically, that's going to skew younger, right? It's going to skew younger. So you're, getting somebody who's fresh out of school, or fresh out of, whatever part of their life where they're in. They're looking to establish themselves. They'll be looking at stuff like this typically and being like, should I do it? Okay. All right. Let's think about this. So we're seeing some signs of filtering there, which I find kind of fascinating because they're not blatant. They're woven throughout what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like it's a part of the tapestry.
Yeah. It's like when maybe they're targeting someone who just had a fresh breakup and the person is like, do I get a haircut or do I move to Australia? I think that's what they're looking for.
It's funny. I was thinking that too. Cause we had another job, ad that we roasted on another episode not too long ago where it was the one about the director of first impressions. So they were filtering very clearly for somebody who was young, who was female, who was willing to work, extra hours in an evening, once a week, plus the odd weekend to do things here and there and everywhere. And the discussion came up like, okay, well, this person doesn't have a family. They're not established yet. Like that's your typical kind of target for that. But another part of that could be someone who is at the other end of their career or partway through their career, and they've had a breakup or they've had some sort of tragic circumstance where their family ties have kind of gone away and they're looking for a fresh start. This could also be for that kind of person, right?
But this is interesting too, because it's not like we're saying that as a bad thing. To me, it's a bad thing when you're targeting like, gender or whatever. But like,
100%.
This is part of designing a role, is understanding your ideal candidate. Who are you looking for? And then really speak their language. Like you can do that if you know exactly the type of individual you're looking for. We're not saying necessarily that it's bad that you would want someone who doesn't maybe have a family and so they can work more hours and dedicate themselves more to the organization. I mean, whatever it is what it is. But you really need to take the time and not just look about like the role design in your organization, but like the individual, what are the characteristics and behaviors that you think they need to be successful in this role and to drive your strategy and your mission vision forward. Like make up a persona and then like write them a letter convincing them to take this job and then make your job ad from that. Like it sounds like a lot of work, but that's how you stop saying as an organization, there are no good candidates out there. We can't find anyone out there. Well, it's because you're doing it wrong. So yes, like there are things that you can do from the organization's perspective to really like focus in on the individual that you're looking for. And then that's how you find each other. You lock eyes across the room and you're like, I'm moving to Australia. So yeah.
Yeah. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I will say it in the future. Recruiting is marketing. Recruiting is marketing. And you talk a lot about the ideal candidate profile. And that's a part of the process, right? Understanding who you're speaking to. In the marketing kind of world, it's ideal client profile or it's a customer persona. Like all good marketing campaigns, marketing strategies start from that point. Understand your customer, understand your audience, whether it's a candidate or whether it's someone who's going to buy something from you. It's the same thing. You got to understand them. That's the very beginning of all this.
Yeah. And I just don't think that we see that. Like, again, we see so many job ads and they're just so like stale and generic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it is something that you can really fine tune and then get really good at. And I think you'd be surprised at the quality of candidates. Cause I agree. Like if you blast out a generic job ad, you're going to get a lot of generic applicants, and it's so much more work to sift through that and find what it is that you're looking for instead of taking the time like right at the beginning to do it the right way. So, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Let's move on to the back half of the job ad. Like I said, this is a short job ad, but lots in it. So the next heading or section is "You'll thrive here if you," then we've got 5 bullet points. First one, have sales or business development experience, especially phone-based, love the buzz of hitting targets and closing deals, have a genuine interest in financial markets, communicate with confidence and credibility, are hungry for success and not afraid of the grind. Then the last section, we've got 6 bullet points. Section's called "What's in it for you?" Hands-on mentorship from experienced heads of desk, ongoing training and full RG-146 support, access to institutional grade research and exclusive market insights, exposure to both ASX and international markets, prime Sydney office with harbourfront views, the thrill of building a career where your results speak for themselves. And then it goes to close off by saying, if you want a job, look elsewhere. If you want a career in the markets, this is it. This role is based in Sydney, so would require relocation with sponsorship, exclamation mark. Work location, in person, because you're going to be in Sydney.
You're like remote.
Australia, New Zealand is one of those regions where I actually find it the most difficult to work remote with clients when I work with folks over there, because the time difference it's awkward. It's awkward. From me, it's like between 14 and 16 hours. Like, it's not so bad in kind of the business parts, business centers of Asia, where it's just straight 12. Your 9 a.m. is their 9 p.m. Your 9 p.m. is their 9 a.m. That's manageable. But the 14-hour thing, the 16-hour thing is like, it's tough. It's tough. So what did you think about the back half? They packed a lot into a couple of sections there.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that it said phone-based, that like sales and BD phone-based. For some reason, we're roasting a lot of job ads that talk about phone type stuff, like the phones are making a comeback or something. But that's interesting to me that's very specific. And I guess it ties back to the beginning of the job ad, where if I recall correctly, you did say that there would be like cold calling maybe involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of that. And that's hard. That's like, you need to have a certain disposition to be able to just make cold calls. And again, maybe that is why they want someone from Canada, because if they're hearing like an accent that's different, they're maybe inclined to just straight up hang up the phone. I don't know. But that's a tough thing. Like, I could never be in sales. I have one day we'll do an episode where we share some stories about other jobs that we had before we found the ones that we were more suited to, because I've had a couple of these like odd type of roles where I'm like, oh, this is not for me. So yeah, you need to be able to do that. What I found was interesting is that a lot of the descriptors that they were using, like they used the word thrill, buzz, grind, like it's very aggressive wording, because it is a very aggressive industry and an aggressive role. So again, this is them, where it's interesting to me that you're saying it's probably a recruitment firm looking to helping to fill this role, because in a sense, they know what they're doing by using that language. They're using language to try to like entice someone. They're the exclamation points throughout and that kind of thing. So I find that to be really fascinating, like the way that they've designed this and the approach that they're using. Mentorship is great. Like, again, they're showing what that means. And that's it. That's really all I have to say about that. And like, no, Doi, it's in person.
Every time that I read through parts of this job ad, just in my brain, Leo DiCaprio pops
This is
in
what
the
I
Wolf
was
of Wall
thinking.
Street, where
Wolf of Wall
he's
Street.
doing like the boiler room thing very early on in the movie, where he's on the phone, he's got his feet on the
Yes.
desk, the phone is there, he's tipped back, he's just talking absolute cack to try and sell these equities. Like, I picture this being that. This has much more of a veneer of being um ethical, I guess, is the way to put it. It seems like more of a thing. It seems a little bit more like we will follow the rules, because they do talk about like the certification and everything in there. But I still picture like that young dude hungry to make money.
This is it.
Every time they make a sale, like they ring the bell or something goofy like that,
And they're like,
to
and
celebrate that
you
they've.
get a cocaine, and you get a cocaine, you get a cocaine. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as you were reading it. Like, absolutely. I have a question for you though. Like, how close to the end are you of this job ad? Because what I'm not seeing is, and I mean, it's there. It's like woven throughout the job ad somewhat,
So
but
let's talk about what you're not seeing, because that actually is the end, with the exception of the salary.
okay, interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
So this is where, when you're using a third party recruiter to design your job ads, this is where I find there's a gap, there's a lack, and that is they just can't properly convey the culture. Like, they've
Mm-hmm.
done a good job making it seem like an exciting opportunity, but I don't know much about the culture of that organization. They talk about mentorship, so there are some indications, but like, what else is there? What's the culture? What's it going to be like working there? Again, like, we can guess based on that environment, but or that
Yeah.
sector. But interesting that that's it.
Yep. That is 100% the job ad. And it is as telling, as you say, from what's missing
Yeah.
as what's there. One thing that stood out to me is like they're talking about the heads of desk. Okay. That means that if you kind of transpose that to an organizational structure that we'd be a little bit more familiar with, the head of desk is like a business unit owner. So you're talking like the director of a department sort of thing.
Right.
That's a head of desk. You'll have a head of desk for a particular financial market, or a particular like hedge opportunity, or a particular pool of equity that's like special. These brokerages, they tend to segment them that way, and the head of desk runs that whole thing. And then you've got investment managers and brokers and analysts kind of like sitting inside that structure. So they are talking a little bit about the heads of desk, and they're saying hands-on mentorship from the head of desk. That's actually kind of a thing. If you're
Yeah.
starting out your career very early on, and the head of desk that is mentoring you actually knows what they're doing, and they've been around for a while, that's a super valuable opportunity. Now, something interesting though about that is, and I don't know if they're doing this on purpose or if it's an oversight, to read through this job ad and truly understand kind of the value of what they're proposing for you to start your career, you have to have kind of been in financial services already. You have to be familiar with these terms. You have to be familiar with these dynamics, with how financial services operations are structured and work, with brokerages, how they're structured and work. Because if you don't have any exposure to that environment, you're not going to understand what all this is about. It could just be like, I'm going to go to Australia and it'll be great.
Well, this is a good point, because did they talk about qualifications? There was something about something, but there's no like.
There's really not a lot. So they don't list out like we would expect in traditional job ads here in North America. They don't list out like, you must have a bachelor's in blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. You must have a number of years in blah, blah, blah. Like, the only qualifications that they really talk about in this tapestry is you must be a sales oriented person. You must have like interest in financial markets and kind of understand what that's all about. That's really all they talk about. There's nothing formal, which I found very interesting. So that suggests to me that they would consider someone who doesn't have a post-secondary education, which I think is great.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, it sounds like obviously then they're not married to like having all of these specific qualifications. I like that. I like when a company is savvy enough to understand that what this role entails is grind. and soft skills and a disposition, and not so much like those hard qualifications. I like that. I think more companies need to do that. I think we get so stuck in like, no, you have to have done this for like X amount of time in this specific industry. And like people can learn. We're so adaptable, and we're so fluid in what we are able to learn and learn quickly. It's like when we see job ads that say you need experience in this kind of like software, but it's like, okay, but anyone can learn any of these softwares in like less than a day. So do you really need that? Or are you looking for someone? Can you describe what that characteristic is in a different way and not tie it to one like software system that your company just happens to use? And like, are you disqualifying people because they don't know how to use that specific software? Like that's dumb. Like you miss out.
That brings me back to my my all-time favorite. You must be able to use the Microsoft Office suite to be considered for this job.
Maybe you need to say, we need someone who has a lot of patience with clunky softwares. I don't know, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So we're about to head into what remains my favorite part of every episode. It is time, Jen, to guess the salary.
I don't like it.
The salary is posted in Australian dollars, which is on parity with the Canadian dollar. So basically the same thing. I think it's 98 cents to the dollar. Call it the same thing. It's an in-person job in Sydney, major metropolitan area, probably about the same size as probably about the same size as Vancouver, like the greater Vancouver area. You know, like between 1 and 2 million people sort of live in there. Well served by transportation and road access. Cost of living is probably about the same as Toronto, I would say. So it wouldn't be too far off what you know about Victoria for cost of living. Entry-level job. Sales job. What do you think it's worth?
Tongue-tied. That's too many factors. That's too many. I hate this enough as it is, but considering all of that, no, thank you. That information is helpful. It does paint a bit of a picture. I'm going to take a guess here. Yes, entry level sales role. Again, maybe it does list some kind of commission. I don't know. Cause that's tricky, right? Like base salary could be lower with a really high commission. But can you tell me whether or not it says any?
So there is performance-based incentives attached to the total package. And like, yeah, don't worry about the performance-based stuff. Neither of us would be able to guess that because it's dependent on performance. But the base though, so you're right that there's a base plus performance.
Okay. So I'm going to make it a bit of a like broad base here. I build this up because it makes me so uncomfortable. I'm going to guess anywhere between like 90 and 120, 125 with my gut telling me maybe 110.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
That's a guess. That's a guess.
Am I too generous or am I like, what is it?
So the base salary that they have listed is 55,000 Australian dollars per year. But then they say on target earnings 250,000 Australian dollars per year. So your OTE, it's going to involve your sales performance. And as always with this, like the devil is in the details. So they're saying you can earn between 55,000 and 250,000. Like you've got a floor of 55K. You're going to earn that. Hopefully you can pay your rent with it. You probably can, though you're going to be eating ramen noodles, I would suspect.
Bullshit. Like that. What did you say, 55? Did you say 55?
55.
Like who's uprooting their life and going to Australia for a $55,000 sales role? That's
another filtering point.
Bonkers.
Because the question is, who indeed would do that for 55K guaranteed?
Someone who just had a bad breakup and wants to start over. Interesting. I'm really interesting to hear what like viewers and listeners, what they would have thought that salary would be. And I think the reason why I skewed it to be so high is because it's in Sydney, Australia. Like you said, you think about the location, and the
cost of
living, and it's in office. So even if you were to live outside of the city to save some costs, you're still commuting. So you take that into consideration as well. But I don't know. Maybe it be like that there. I don't know. But I think that that's wild. I think that that's a really low, really, really low salary. So
Yeah, that my putting on my Apple capitalist hat, I would say that that base salary choice is intentional to create structural incentives for the person in this role to be hungry to close deals, right? Apple capitalist hat. That would be my guess of why it's set at what it's set. Also mitigates risk. You know, I think that salary is too low. Personally, I think you need to pay at the very least a living wage in the area where you're requiring the person to work from. You
yes,
know, that's equitable. For our international audiences, because I looked at the data this morning and we have international listeners now, uh, Australian dollars to US dollars. So the range we're talking about is 38,000 US to 175,000 US.
38,000 US.
In Great Britain, that works out to about £29,000 to £130,000 if you hit your OTE or earnings. And for the folks in the European Union, 34,000 euros per year to 153,000 euros per year is the ranges that we're talking about. 153 if you hit all your performance based stuff and you earn your full OTE.
I always find that interesting because like that full OTE thing, like here, and you can make as much as, and I think they say like 250,000, but like, what does that mean? Like to get to that, yes, you have to be hungry and all of those things, but like, what does that look like for your life? What does that mean? So yeah, that's really interesting. Well, this is why I hate the salary guess because dude, I don't know what's happening.
And so a really good contextual point, Des, who's in our studio audience, just brought up that in Sydney, Australia, the median asking rents are 800 per week for a house and 750 per week for a unit in an apartment. So call it 3,000 Australian dollars per month for an apartment. Yeah, that's about Vancouver. That's fairly high. So if you're earning $55,000 per year and your taxes on that take away, let's say 20%. I don't know what taxes are like in Australia. Say you're left with $44,000 per year and you're spending $3,000 a month on your rent. You're not in a great spot because that's $36,000. That means you got to make your life work. Everything else on what, $8,000? If I do the math in my head, that's not a lot of cash to live on. You'd best be a very, very good closer if you're going to make this work.
Absolutely. That's a huge consideration.
We're going to go into the intermission. Jen's going to shut off her camera and read through the job ad. We'll come back afterwards and do the job scoring. For the folks who are in the studio audience, I posted in the chat a link to a poll where you can also submit your scores. And we will include the average score of what you guys thought this was all about in the wrap up to the show. So, Jen, see you later. Welcome back, Jen.
I'm back. Thank you. I still can't see a poll, but maybe it's because I'm not supposed to. So
Hey, you are not supposed to see the poll. That is not what we're doing with this.
fixated on that. Yeah, I'm back. I mean, you basically read it all verbatim, so there wasn't much new, but it's good to kind of I have some notes and got my thoughts in order. So yeah.
All right. So then thinking about the job ad as it was written, what would you score that out of 10?
Okay. So surprisingly, I'm actually giving it a 7 out of 10 because I think that they did a really good job, like trying to achieve their mission, right? And that is to like hype up the job and make it seem really exciting. And so that's like mission accomplished. They've done that. They're selling though. The question is, what are they selling and what are they hyping? And it's really emotion, right? They're trying to hook someone on the emotions of this job. So is it? Yeah, what is the reality of what this job is going to be like? it's also like they lost points for it's a life-changing opportunity, but we don't know the name of the organization. So you're going to uproot and change your life for this mystery opportunity, which yes, will get clearer once you get through to the interview. But still, so I thought it was interesting, exciting. They lost points because there are a few pieces missing there. But yeah, I gave it a 7 out of 10 for that one because I think that they knew what they wanted to get out of the job ad and they did a good job conveying that
Mm-hmm.
message.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thinking about the role design, this could be a little bit tough because we were light on details there, but same question. What would you score the role design out of 10?
So yeah, that one I went with a 6. They got a lot of points from me for talking about the career pathway and explaining what that looks like. That almost never happens. So I have to give them points for that, keeping in mind the bar is low. There's a lot of code for you will work really, really hard. Um, and they lost a ton of points for the salary, which is just wildly inappropriate to me. Their closer at the end is like, if you want a job, don't apply. If you want a career, blah blah blah. Like, it's kind of like a slap you in the face, kind of like, whoa, this is it. This is my opportunity to get into like to become a stockbroker. And again, this just shows that they kind of know what they're doing and they're trying to reach a certain audience where that kind of language is going to be like so cool, right? But at
Yeah.
the same time, like a career to me also includes the conditions in the environment to support your success. And so I don't know that that is going to happen at this type of organization. So those are my scores. What about you?
As usual, I was not too far off, but before we talk about what I scored, audience scores. So the average audience score for the job ad writing was a 7, and the average audience score for the role design was 6.2, 6.3.
Hey, not far off.
So we're kind of converging around the median on this one. For me, I was in the same ballpark. I actually rated the job ad, how it was written and structured and everything, a little bit higher. I gave it an 8. I thought it was really good. One thing that I often find is missing from job ads is a narrative and a tapestry. And what I found particularly appealing and good about this job ad was that they wrote that narrative very, very well. And they very subtly, very passively included their filtering points inside the ad, the job ad. Now, maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it just kind of was a byproduct of the normal financial services bravado that we talked about a little bit. But I found the use of filtering that wasn't super obvious very effective and appealing. I quite like that. So I gave them a lot of credit for that. Definitely doctor points because there were things missing. You know, they didn't talk about anything other than just the base compensation and the salary. The fact that they included that, cool, great. I don't know if it's a requirement or not in Australia to do that. I'm not sure if there's pay transparency laws over there, but they didn't include anything about culture, like you were saying. They didn't have any inclusion and inclusivity statements. They didn't have accessibility statements. You know, maybe they're counting on this being like a very typical, and it's a heavily coded job ad, which I think kind of reflects the industry to a certain extent. Maybe they're counting on that kind of established reality, making it unnecessary, but you should still do it, right? Especially if it's required by law, which I'd be shocked if there weren't requirements to that effect in Australia. Now, maybe this is a gray zone. Maybe they were like, we won't worry about this because we're posting this job ad in Canada and it's an Australian company, which regulator is going to go after who?
Yeah.
What's up here? Like
Yeah.
there might be some of that going on where they felt they could just get away with not really crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So for me, fairly good score on this one. The role design, 5. I wanted to rate it better because from a management model, I see how they've designed this, and it is kind of an industry thing. I see how they've designed this so that they can cookie cutter this role. And I actually do think that they would have some sort of ongoing recruitment process for this role. And they just have a strategy of always be recruiting and always be posting job ads like this in major financial centers. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if there were similar posts from similar job agencies for this organization that turned up in London, that turned up in Amsterdam, that turned up in New York, that turned up in the other financial hubs of the world. It wouldn't shock me at all. Because with this, you can really build a model where it's like, yep, if you hit your 20, we can scale this up from our perspective to the infinite because we're covering our overhead. We don't have to worry about it. I wanted to rate them better because I like that model design, but you're not paying a living wage.
Yeah.
That is blatantly obvious. They are not paying a living wage. So structurally, what that means is they're going to have, I think, quite a bit of turnover in this role. And you want to create hungry salespeople who will go out and do the things to close the deals. I get that instinct, but it's counterproductive because your costs of bringing people over on sponsorship, paying that $55,000 base, doing the training, doing the mentoring, supporting them through their
Paying the
certification
recruiter.
process, and paying the recruiter, that's going to add up. So I would actually look at this as an opportunity for them. I would say, you know what? Scale back on the volume of people that you're bringing into this program a little bit, be more selective, be more choosy, pay a living wage. Your retention on that is going to pay back dividends to you because you want all this leak out of your organization, all of this capital leak from turnover. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me for the role design.
Also say too, like if they, for the cost of what it would be to pay a recruiter for like this work, you could get tickets to Toronto, fly over there, hang out in the financial district, go to some bars, start talking to people and be like, hey, you want to move to Australia? We'll sponsor you, right? Like, and I'm actually serious about that. Like boots on the ground, go in, talk to people and start having those conversations. I think that would be a winning approach for them. And they could even maybe start to build a reputation for that. Like that's how they are known to recruit their people, and people will like start to look for them in that way. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Doing a roadshow, yeah. Doing a roadshow would probably cost you less. I would say that it wouldn't be like the bars in the financial district that you'd want to hang out at to do this. Like, I would be talking to lecturers at some of the preeminent universities that have like BCom programs, master of finance programs as well. Build relationships with them and be like, hey, we want to fly one of our head of desk over to talk about how the markets work. And, can you organize a guest lecture for us? And, we'll pay for everything. And maybe we'll make like a token donation to your department, like association or whatever, like whatever kind of charitable thing that the university would have going on. Like, maybe we'll do that. I'd take that approach because then you're going to get people who are fresh. They're super interested in the topic, the content, right? Financial markets. And you're probably also going to get young folks who are like, I don't know what I'm going to do after graduation. Why not?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good call. And Des in our live audience mentioned the cost of round trip flights. So typically recruiters will take about 20% of the first year's salary cost, right? So when I said it's probably cheaper to go to Toronto and source yourself, with a salary like $55,000, maybe that's not true. So I don't know, right? Maybe it is
I don't
cheaper to
know.
do the
Like,
recruiter.
if you're doing this roadshow program where and the cost that the audience pulled out is about $2,500 Canadian round trip, give or take, with the exchange. So your cost to do that for just one person, yeah, you're right, doesn't make financial sense. But if you're recruiting, say, 10 people, and you're not paying the recruiter commission on 10 people, but your round trip flight is $2,500 and maybe your hotel for a week to hit a couple of campuses, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, you could probably do in the same week. Your cost for travel and hotel for that is, say, another $2,500, $5,000. So if you're able to bring in more than 2 people into this program, yeah, you're ahead financially. And you're probably building
Absolutely.
long-term relationships too.
Yeah, you're building your pipeline. So those are some tips for the job posters who are totally listening to this and are
Because why wouldn't they listen?
absolutely great idea.
We don't scare them off with the name of the show, Roast the Post.
Yeah. Awesome. Good one. Very good one.
I think that we can consider this one roasted.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Roast the Post. If this episode made you feel feisty, leave a rating or review wherever you watched or listened. It turns the algorithm into our butler and helps new listeners find the show. We record new episodes every week in our live studio audience. Check the link in the show notes for more.